Oh, that's the wrong tab.
See, this is why I didn't want to do it.
I'm a failure at everything.
Mix. Okay, good to know. Can you full screen it?
I think it's full screen.
Should I go on the other side?
This is as full screen as it's gonna get, I think.
Really? I think it should. The
Is it-
tab shouldn't be open anymore at the top.
What's the thing again? F11? Not working. Steve, come over for a second.
Is it this thing?
Well, that's not it. What was that?
Yeah, that one. No.
This one is show, which you don't want to see my face. It was working earlier. I don't think it likes the projector.
Wasn't fitted and wait a second. My read job.
Life is pain. It was. I think it's just because the projector to the What? Also, no.
Nice.
We're trying to full screen it, but it's not like full screening on the projector.
Control F.
Did you say Control F? Yeah. Why is Control F? What are we trying to find?
There's a button with a power symbol on it. Do I just hold that and then it'll? Because I'm thinking maybe like I want it like full power.
I don't see that. Where do you see that?
Hover at the top of the screen. Now go to view. Oh, you are full screen.
Yeah, that's what I think it's because of the I have been trying F11 7 times. Yeah, F11 does not. F2. This shouldn't be this hard. We all have good technology.
Also, didn't we just have a full screen presentation like a second ago?
Yeah. Oh, we did. And now this is the turbo button.
Alright,
How about leaving it like this and then pressing F? No. Oh well,
We make
I guess we can
games.
just have it
yeah, that's good.
go back to full screen. Yeah. How to make a living. Just have it real casual. Anna.
Hangout. This is a hangout.
Okay, guys. Well, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
It's probably like halfway through. We're just gonna come back up.
Yeah. What do you wanna? You wanna do 2 pillars of steadfastness on either side of the screen? All right, that's fine. Can everyone see me?
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Well, so this is super exciting because I know not all of you are here to see our talk, but there's still so many people here, so I'm going to assume that you're all very excited about how to make a living as an artist. Good. Okay, cool. So, I'm Jameela Wahlgren. I'm a freelance illustrator and a concept artist, and I make most of my money doing editorial illustrations, children's books, and then a smattering of stuff here and there, licensing my artwork for like greeting cards, wrapping paper, gift cards, all that kind of stuff. And that's just a nice residual income, and we'll go into that kind of stuff later.
My name is Clement from Swennes, and since I graduated high school, I've been making a living doing game art. I do mostly like animation and illustration. I do some 3D work as well. Most of my clients are for indie games. I've done work for a few companies though as well. We'll talk about that later as well.
So the goal of this presentation is to teach you guys how to make a living as an artist, because I know sometimes it seems like art is just a hobby, but I swear to God it's possible. It's a real thing. So we're going to be talking about the nitty-gritty, things like how to approach art directors, how to get your work out there, contracts, payment, licensing, all that kind of stuff. So our presentation is going to be broken down into 2 sections. One, getting work, so how to get people to see your stuff in the first place. And the second is going to be how to manage a gig once you've landed it. So this is our first section.
Oh, wait, by the way,
Yeah.
if anyone has any questions,
Oh, right.
Yeah, go back to the last slide. Yeah. You can wait to the end for the Q&A, but if you have any questions during our presentation, I know sometimes it's hard to remember, you can go ahead and like shout it out and we'll field them as it comes.
Yes, definitely. So our first section is going to be on getting work.
Yeah. So that's a very low frame rate of what it actually is. I don't know why it's very. Oh, because Google Hangouts has a lower frame rate. Oh, darn.
That's okay.
No, it's not.
It's okay. No one's hiring you based on this presentation.
Okay, so imagine this, but every frame is like 90 milliseconds instead of like a full second.
And that means something to all of you, right?
Okay, darn. But anyway, so yeah, this is a dragon I'm working on right now for a project.
And it's pretty exciting that people will pay you money to draw dragons. I
Yeah.
think 8-year-old me is like pretty blown away that I can get money doing this kind of stuff. So there are many different people who will pay you for your work, and they have lots of different titles, and this is going to be important in a minute. But some of them are art director, creative director, producer, designer, and individual clients. But the first step with all of them is getting them to see your work. So first, I'm going to be talking about my experience approaching art directors, because that's mostly what I do.
And then I'm going to take over and talk about pitching to individual clients.
So I want to offer you guys as much concrete information as possible. Going to jump right in and explain how you get money as an artist. Basically, the short story is that you send your work to an art director, you say, I want to work with you, will you please work with me, and then you hope they email you back. But I want to break that down a little further, and to make this more digestible and to like make it make more sense, I'm going to walk you through the basic anatomy of one of my jobs. So the first step is doing what I like to call career stalking, which is not illegal and a lot less terrifying than it sounds. And it's basically when you find an artist who has a comparable style to your own. So what I did was, in this example, I went through portfolio websites like Behance or ArtStation, and I searched for keywords that would describe my artwork. So for example, I searched like flat, comic, and illustration. And I found Callie Seesmeyer here. And then what I did, once you found your role model, what you want to do is go through their portfolio and basically take note of everyone that's hired them. And this is important because if they've hired Callie Seesmeyer, why wouldn't they hire Jameela Wahlgren? They like Callie's taste. They like Callie's art. Why wouldn't they like mine? It's not creepy. It's great. So you're going to go through and you're going to look for, people like to call out the names of who they've worked with. So great places to look are their blogs, their portfolio websites. If they're on a podcast, sometimes they'll like name drop clients. So I just scroll through and I look for example, the Boston Globe hired Callie to do this illustration. So you're going to make a note of what the organization is, and then you're going to make a note of who at that organization you want to contact. So again, people like to name drop. So at the Boston Globe, Callie Seesmeyer contacted Ryan Huddle, and that's her art director. So what I do then is I make a spreadsheet of everyone who hired them and the names and titles of those people. And then you're going to try to find their email. And this can get a little tricky because art directors receive about 50 emails a day from strangers that they do not want to see. And so they guard their emails pretty carefully. But there's lots of tips to finding art directors' emails. The best one I can give you is that if you go to the website of the company where they work, find the naming convention. So basically, if you find out that everyone else in the company is the first initial and the last name, it's a pretty sure bet that your art director is also going to be the first initial and the last name. And Gmail will tell you if that email doesn't exist. So really just try all the combinations you can think of. And then they get really nervous when you found them. But and you can be like, no, a friend of a friend gave it to me. But yeah, that's not professional.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks.
Thank
I just thought you were warning us.
No.
There's water! Okay, awesome. So then once you have your list of art directors, you're going to put together a portfolio. So I didn't really know how much depth to go into here. Who here knows how to structure a portfolio? Like, raise your hand if you've been taught, like, okay. So basically the short version of it is you want 5 to 7 pieces at like a short amount, and you want to put your best piece first, your second best piece last, your third best piece second, your fourth best piece second to last. So basically best, and then work your way into the middle. And this way an art director is going to start on a good note and they're going to finish on a good note. And another important thing about structuring your portfolio is keep in mind who's going to be looking at it, like what device they're going to be using. So you want to do horizontal landscape formats for any portfolios you're going to be sending out an email, because that's where they're going to be looking at it. And you want to do a print, like portrait portfolio for anything you're going to be bringing in person. Another really important thing about sending portfolios is that almost every spam filter will filter out an unsolicited email with a meg or larger attachment. So once you've created your PDF of your 5 to 7 pieces in your portfolio, you want to condense it. There's a great free website called smallpdf.com, and you just run your PDF right through and it'll shave. It doesn't like affect, it compresses, it doesn't affect the image quality at all, but it shaves the size right down so that those emails are going to get through the art director and you're not just going to go straight to their spam folder. So as the last step, you want to send out to this list of art directors that you've gotten this portfolio that you've created. And what's pretty important about doing that is make your email short. Like I said, they get 50 emails a day. They're just going to be annoyed at you if they see paragraphs introducing yourself. The relevant information you want to have is who you are and what your title is. So if you're an animator, say you're an animator. If you're an illustrator, typography, whatever, say what you do and say who your clients are, because that's going to give you prestige. It's going to give you credibility. They're going to say someone else trusted them with money. Maybe I can do this too. So name drop a couple of your like best looking clients. If you don't have any clients yet, you probably do. If you've ever done like a piece for your like high school newsletter, you know, say that at least, because it's an organization that isn't you that paid you for art. And you're gonna ask them for work. So here's an example of basically the template I send out to all art directors. Morning, Amy, my name's Jameela, and I'm ready to reach out and send you some of my recent editorial work. My past clients include Urban Outfitters, Hachette Publishing, Milwaukee Magazine, and more. If you have any upcoming projects you'd think I'd be a good fit for, I'd love to work with you. I think it'd be a lot of fun to do something for insert name of the place they work so they feel like you actually care. Thanks so much. Have a great day. And my portfolio would go at the bottom there.
Cool. Well, these are really low frame rate again. Should I go to my Twitter and show them, do you think?
No, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, well,
I know this is like killing you right now.
Yeah, imagine these look beautiful. Cool, so
Really, I can co-sign on that.
Yeah, like they're really smooth, like not choppy. Cool, anyway, so my work differs from Jameela's a little bit in that, like, while she works for companies and art directors and stuff, I work individually with clients. And a lot of these people are like software developers and other people that in their free time, they come home and with their extra money, they'll invest in building a game of their own. So because I find most of my work with doing pixel art and stuff, most of my clients are trying to do their work without a publisher. So oftentimes working with them is a little bit less official than Mila's process.
Less professional.
Yeah, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Cool. So early last November, I found this tweet, and since I'm mostly an animator and animation is my passion, I instantly applied because it looked great. So scoping it out, I checked out and saw that it had a successfully funded Kickstarter and had a budget of $20,000, and it meant that they had secure funding for the project, and that I could like give them my rate, and there wouldn't be any like negotiation really. It would just sort of pass smoothly. There was also a lot of exposure involved because the creator, Heartbeast, has a Twitter following of 8,000, and I only have like around 1,000, so it's like a lot larger audience to spread my work to. So I thought about the exposure as well. Next slide. So here's the email. It's actually kind of impossible to read, but I can zoom in on my phone, I think. Yeah. Anyway, so here's the email that got me the job. Roughly how I write my emails is first I'll like approach them and introduce myself, link to my portfolio, and then I'll shift the focus towards their project and specifically what about it I like and any work that I've done in the past that was similar to what they have. After linking your portfolio and stuff, if you're comfortable with it, you can talk about your rate. In this case, I was because I knew that they had secured their funding. I suggested some other stuff I could do, like I work in 3D as well, so I thought if you have any large like monsters or something, I can animate those in 3D, and I have a pipeline for converting that to pixel art. My rate, which was 23 an hour, I told him I could make his game more beautiful. So he said, hey, Clement, thanks for, I can't read this because it's blurry, but anyways, he said there was another candidate, and I had a Skype interview with him, and everything went smoothly, and I got the job. Next slide. Yeah, this is yours. Go ahead.
So before we move on to what to do once you've actually gotten a job, I wanted to share some unexpected ways that we've found work. Tell everyone you're an artist. I know this feels really uncomfortable if you're an introvert, but I heard a quote once where someone was saying that if you're 80% talented and 100% driven, you're going to get way more work than if you're 100% talented and 80% driven. I, especially when I was starting out, got jobs from the weirdest places. I got a job from my dentist because I mentioned that I drew children's books. I got a job from childhood friends that I hadn't talked to in 15 years. And none of those things would have happened unless I told everyone that I was an illustrator. This is super, super important. Have a social media presence and post ideally every day, but as often as you possibly can, because people will start to look for what you do. You're going to become, no one really uses bookmarks anymore, I don't think, but you're going to become somewhere that they go on the internet. Take part in things like, I don't know if you guys know Inktober, it's like a daily prompt challenge. Those things are great for getting followers because if someone likes your first day, they're going to go to your second, third, and fourth day, and then all of a sudden they're following you. This doesn't really work if you only post once a week, once a month, because people are just sort of like, I'll check it once a month and see if she's posted a new thing yet. And really, really, really importantly, I found, find a community, because artists make you a better artist. You'll get more eyes on your work, and one of the nicest things about it is that if one of your friends gets a job and they're too busy, they'll be like, yeah, well, I have my wonderfully talented friend Clement here. I'm too busy to take the job, but let me recommend someone else for it.
It's actually kind of happened. And about that last point also, certain communities are better for certain types of art. For example, I helped run a community called Pixelation, which focuses on pixel art, and because of that, and because I'm so integrated in the community, I get a lot of jobs through that, through my portfolio on it, and also through like the ethos of running a site, like they kind of, the higher up you are in the hierarchy, it seems like people respect that more. So if you can try to like make strides to get integrated in something like that, it's really helpful. Some other forums are Polycount if you're doing 3D, conceptart.org if you're doing concept art, obviously. But yeah.
What was that last one?
Conceptart.org. Yeah, it's a huge site for people that are doing concept art illustrations for like mostly a lot of tabletop RPGs and a lot of like AAA developers. Like a lot of they hire from that kind of cool people.
And one other thing I wanted to mention was it's like a sad but true fact of reality that the more followers you have, the more prestige you have. It doesn't really make any sense because you can be incredibly irresponsible and never meet a deadline and have 30,000 followers. But to employers, that's one of the things they look for. Also, if you're trying to sell yourself to an agent, I didn't know this, how many followers you have literally factors into an algorithm. Like they'll be like, is this person worth hiring? Will they make me enough money? And they'll put in how many followers you have, and that will like bump you up into the bracket of like less dangerous to take on as an artist. So pretty important.
Oh, yeah, and like I showed earlier with the whole Kickstarter thing, actually, instead of looking directly for people that are posting for their jobs, sometimes you can come to them. If you look on Kickstarter, depending on what type of art you do, for me, it'd be mostly in the video game section. What I'll do is I'll go and I'll look and I'll see if anyone is close to being funded or already funded, and there you can see people who already have a budget at their disposal that you can email. They're probably looking for more artists because they're feeling the pressure of, oh no, now we need to deliver. And I don't know, I think that's just a really smart way to kind of like pick out your clients. I found success with it at least. Also, be really smart about how you use your social media. In addition to posting every day, you should post the correct site for your audience. Like for example, Jameela, she does mostly illustration work, so she has a huge following on Instagram. Whereas I don't post on Instagram because I do animation work, and a lot of stuff for video games, and there's hardly any people following people for that on there, so I do Twitter instead. Cool. So now I'm going to take over and talk a bit about how to handle clients. There's a few parts to this, like setting up contracts, how to keep your sanity. So with clients, they come from a lot of different backgrounds. There's a lot of different types of clients. I mentioned earlier that there's software developers who come home and in their hobby time and they want to make a game. These people probably aren't going to have a huge budget, but for me, what I do is I juggle a few of them and they provide enough income in the background to handle the larger ones. With the indie game industry specifically, as an artist, you're going to be expected to do a lot more roles than you normally would if you were working under an art director for a larger company. So when I worked for Way Forward on some 3DS games, I was working directly under art directors who were telling me exactly what to do, but for my clients that I take on most of the time, I kind of have to be my own art director. No, not the slide. Cool. A lot of the more accessible work that you can get when you're breaking into the industry are these like indie developers who have like maybe like they can spend $500 a month. They can only pay you for like those if you're working at like $20 an hour for those like 25 hours. But it's like if you have enough of them stacked up, you can make a pretty good living. Next slide. Cool. Cool. Maintaining relationships with all of these different clients is really important. It can be extremely stressful because a lot of these people not being part of a larger company, the boundaries aren't set in stone. I had a lot of clients who wanted to be more friendly than maybe they should have been. I had a lot of clients who also were kind of surly or they took things personal. They don't have to answer to anyone. So working in freelance is a little bit of a rocky road. I do have clients I would consider as close friends that I like to talk to about non-work stuff, but you can't really do that if you're working for multiple people because you only have so much time. So it's really good to set boundaries. Yeah, next slide.
So having a contract will never, ever, ever matter until it matters so much. Like you will never think about a contract until your art director comes and tells you that like they sold the rights to your work and you're like, oh wait, you can legally do that because I never signed a contract. So because you don't want to wait until a disaster happens, have a contract every time. This is like maybe awkward to do the first couple times, but no one else on the other end of the business thinks it's awkward. Like you might starting out and be like, oh, I don't deserve a contract. I'm not that big of a deal. You deserve a contract and you need one. And if you don't have a list of all your contracts somewhere, then you're going to be in trouble one day. So make sure you bring that up early in the conversation and make sure you have your own contracts that you supply, because I don't know of a diplomatic way to say this, but basically everyone's going to be trying to get the most out of the deal. So if your contract or if your client supplies the contract, they're going to give you a contract where they get all the rights. If you supply the contract, then you get to say, no, you don't own the rights to my work and I can still publish it wherever I want to. So make sure you get in early with that and you're the first person to suggest and offer a contract.
Yeah, and often I've found to be the case that some of my clients will send me the contract and ask if everything's okay. And definitely don't just say, yeah, everything's fine. Double check and make sure, because there's some fine print we have to consider over.
Neil, what did you say about a list of all your contracts?
Yeah, oh yeah, just like have a folder of like every contract you've ever signed so that you can have a paper trail. And if anyone like is like, oh, I don't know about this, you can be like, bam, here's the contract that we both signed. So I just have like a folder of all of my contracts on my computer and backed up on Google Drive.
Yeah. All right, the next point is don't undercharge. So let's say you're working at a real physical location. Your taxes are all taken care of they're all taken out ahead of time. But when you're working freelance, you have to pay your own taxes. You have to pay self-employment tax. You have to account for a lot of things that your employer isn't going to take account for you because you are your own employer. So definitely when I was starting out, I wasn't charging quite as much as I should have been, and when taxes came around, I was in trouble. So always make sure, and also for like consultation time, you can't directly charge for consultation for a lot of clients, they won't have that, but you can kind of buffer your rate if it's something that requires a lot of extracurricular work to the actual job itself. And also, when you're working with your clients, make sure that even if you haven't signed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, that you get very clear ownership agreements and where you can post your work on the internet, because sometimes they'll be wanting to keep something a secret for later. They'll be wanting to, like, let's say you did like a really cool boss and they're waiting to announce it and you release that early, you can get in trouble with your client. Okay, so this section is self-care. Which is probably one of the most important parts, because without it, you literally will stop working. Making a living as an artist is definitely not just about your ability to do the art or the clients or the communication. Your self-care factors into a huge portion of it. There's a few realities of working as a freelancer, and time management is probably one of the most important ones. There's a few common traps in this, like taking on too much work and all this other stuff that goes along with that, but mostly these can be solved by just being very in tune with your boundaries and setting up spreadsheets. Maybe I know when I get too over my head, I start to make a spreadsheet of like, okay, this is all the hours in the week I have and I can fit these jobs in. Next slide. Your mental health is super important, even if you're not mentally ill or have super big problems like anxiety, because it can be really draining to work alone constantly. And the security of your job is also important, because your clients are going through your life like water through a river. Some of them will just stop their project in the middle of it. They'll say, we don't have enough funds anymore. And what are you going to do after that? If you're relying on like one source of income to live, then you're going to be out of luck. So oftentimes what you need to consider is having multiple streams of income. So going over these 3 points again, managing your time is super important. Like I said before, I do spreadsheets and I plan out my days. There's some websites that can keep track of like your time. There's some apps actually that, like for Chrome, that can keep track of like your procrastination time and other stuff. And there's some apps for Windows too that can keep track of how long you spend in each program to make sure that you're getting the most out of your day. About the mental health, actually an interesting anecdote is one of my clients was giving a presentation opposite of this one, which was how to work with artists, and he was giving it to a bunch of developers. And one of his points was that almost every single artist that he had worked with had some form of mental illness or some sort of quirk about them that caused problems with their workflow. And, you know, obviously me being
none of the
one
developers did, right? But none of the developers did.
Oh, of course. So, of course, me being one of his artists, that includes me. Definitely, like, suffering from isolation when you're working. I started doing freelance work when I was in high school, and I didn't go to college. I just kept doing freelance work, and it was really important to try to make social groups that I could integrate into, because I didn't have that from school or work. Right now I'm working in a studio with Jameela's partner, Corey, and it's one of the best decisions that I made for my career, is surrounding myself with other people. And this space here, Indy Hall, is great for freelancers. I think it's probably one of the most important decisions to make, is how you're going to spend your time, alone or with other people. It's also important to note that as a freelancer, your security is definitely not secure. My brain kind of thrives in chaos. I love getting new work. I love like things, getting rid of old work. I love new faces. I love all of that. But if you're someone who really values having one steady job for like 10 years, freelance probably isn't right for you. Next. Yeah.
So on that note, I wanted to talk about when I realized that, which was a couple years ago. I quit my job, And I was so pumped about it, and I was like, why didn't I make this decision sooner? I have flexibility, I have freedom. I was like patting myself on the back. I was like, you're so great. You made all the great decisions. And I was listening to this interview with this other famous freelancer, and I was like, you and I, man, we've got everything in common. We made the right decisions. And then he got to the point in the interview where he was like, yeah, my favorite part about freelancing is that I hate people, and I don't have to see people anymore. And I was like, oh, that's not me. Shoot, I did not think of that ahead of time. And I'm not saying this to dissuade you from freelancing. I'm not saying freelancing is the right thing for everyone. But I don't want you to be me listening to a podcast after you quit your job and realizing this. It's so lonely. It's so isolating and it's so lonely. And unless you work in a place like this, or if you get a studio with your friends, or even just meet up with other coworkers in someone's house, like that's a real thing. You get burnt out and you get lonely, and also you start to hate your work so much because no one else is telling you how pretty it is, and you're just sitting there being like, why did I do this? Why did I make any of these decisions? So keep that kind of stuff in mind.
Even just pick up like a shift a week as a barista or something.
That's genuinely something I was considering. Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot of the skeleton of what we wanted to talk about. There's a bunch of things that we didn't get into, so if anyone has questions, feel free to shout them out. Some things that we did want to talk about, if this like jogs your memory or prompts you, no, it's not all.
Yeah.
One thing I know I wondered a lot about is, do I have to have a specific style? When do I develop my style? How do I find a style? I wondered a lot, am I good enough to send my work out yet? Like, will art directors pay attention to me? Am I going to be hurting my career if I send it out now? And contracts, just general subject. This was like mystical adult land to me, and I had no idea what that meant or what to do with them. So we have a lot to say on any of those things, but if you guys have any questions, just
go ahead.
Yeah.
So about developing a style.
Yes.
I've been wrestling with that for a bit, because I've developed 2 or 3.
Yes.
But it seems like in your pitch, that is the 5 to 7 pieces. That should really be 5 to 7 pieces of one style, should it not?
Okay, so what's important is showing mastery. So if you're really good at 3 styles, feel free to have all of them in there, but make sure that none of them, make sure that they're all a good fit for the client. So like, yeah, like don't send your pixel art to Blizzard and be like, I think we'd be a great team. Like, they're not interested in that. So if you see a lot of different work on their website, organization, whatever they are, feel free to send them a lot of different work, but make sure it's your best work. Like, even if it doesn't look like each other, make sure it's all the best. And maybe mention that in your email. Say, if one of these styles struck your fancy, let me know which one looks good to you.
Yeah, and answering the question as well, but maybe not specifically to you, referencing more to game art, if you're interdisciplinary, like if you're doing 3D, and if you're doing like animation, if you're doing illustration, it is good to send multiple things, because a lot of people are looking for multiple types of artists and not just looking for one.
Well, I was going to get to the game art situation in a second. I'm getting back to you now.
Oh, okay.
But I've done storyboards for film projects.
Yes.
And so storyboards can be basically glorified stick figures. I mean, everything from glorified stick figures with arrows showing where the guy's going to move his arm to something much more highly developed, like a keyframe from a Disney animation. It's also can be a storyboard.
Yeah.
Is there room for that kind of pitching clients in game development, even if I don't know anything about the software aspect?
Yeah.
I can pitch them as a development storyboard guy.
Yeah, there is definitely some niches for that. Like, for example, when I was mentioning Kickstarter, there's a lot of people that are looking for like trailers and stuff like that, and they usually have like an animated segment, or like they have some kind of promotional material. So that is definitely an avenue. I wouldn't say that it's like a predominant set of work that you can do explicitly, but I do think that there's definitely stuff there you could find.
I would have a counterpoint to that.
Yeah.
That was not my experience. I had no experience at all in game development, and I was like the concept artist and storyboard artist.
Yeah,
and like, yeah, you have to be good at telling a story.
No, right. But what I'm saying, now I'm fuzzy after you. I can do all the drawing, but I don't have any of the software knowledge.
Oh yeah,
I haven't touched a game since Ms. Pac-Man.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to conceptual stuff, it doesn't actually get put into the game itself.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be digital. It doesn't have to be integrated with the rest of it. You can do stuff on paper.
So they can talk to me in terms of size dimensions, image dimensions, and I don't have to know a lot of the intricate language about how it's going to be.
It's definitely good to familiarize yourself with it, but it's less required, yeah.
I throw around the words like interdisciplinary. Okay.
Cheap way to make yourself look good. Did anyone else have any questions? I guess I'm going to go around this way. Yeah?
Yeah. I'm just interested about the contracts and the rights and how that works. So you mentioned having the right over your work, but does that mean you're saying the art that you create you can reuse for something else in the future for your own personal use and not for another client, or?
So I'm going to answer your question in the whole room.
Okay.
So this is different from my work than Clement's because, as Clement will probably tell you, when you do work for a game, the game owns it. Like, the game company will own it. And it wouldn't really make sense to resell it for anything else because it's of their game characters. I, on the other hand, do the complete opposite. There's lots of different ways you can do that. You can sell your rights outright. If you do that, charge an astronomical amount of money because you'll never be able to use that art again. It will legally belong to whoever you sell it to. So if they're offering you thousands of dollars and you don't feel like you can get any more money out of that piece, be like, sure, you're welcome to it. Otherwise, you want to do what's called licensing, and you want to have a contract that has a specific time where the license ends. So I do this with greeting cards. I'll draw a picture, send it to the greeting card company, and they'll say, we can print this image and use it on like gift wrap, cards, tote bags, whatever, for 1 year, and then you get it back. And then I can sell that same image to another greeting card company or to another artist or to a blog or whatever. So you want to make sure that your contracts have end terms, and you don't want to see the term in perpetuity because that means forever. That's like keyword for like we own this forever and you can never use it again.
I mean, some contracts literally say from now until the end of the universe, until the end of time.
Right, and you want to steer away from those unless they're very, very lucrative because again, then you can never make money off that art.
Yeah, like Mila said, I sign away the rights to all of my art that I make. So like, while I do have agreements with my clients, like I can post this in my portfolio or on social media, like yeah, at the end of the day, they do own the copyright.
Okay, any other questions?
One more.
Yes.
You had that great detective story about career stalking.
Sure, yeah.
And that was brilliant. What about lists of reps? I mean, back in the day when I was dropping out of art school, there were these huge books in the library which were lists of reps. They were super glossy, blah, blah, blah. What about today? What's the way for
Do you mean an agent or do you mean?
Agents, yeah. Reps.
Yeah, agents are good.
But I mean finding lists.
Oh, finding one. Again, you can use a similar thing. You can do career stalking. That's what I did. Callie's like my go-to for a lot of things. So I, again, found an agent and an agency, and I was like, well, they like her style. Why wouldn't they like mine?
So like Google lists of artist agents.
I would Google the artist and then find who they're represented by. But you can also do that. Like I know there's agencies specifically for children's books, specifically for video game art, specifically for patterns, like all kinds. Yes?
Quick question about contracts. Do you guys have a resource that you could point us to regarding like templates for making contracts?
Yeah, AIGA. I forget what that acronym stands for, but they have lots of resources. They have like pricing guides, like how much to charge for your work, how much to charge per hour, and they have templates for contracts. I would recommend paring them down a lot, or I would recommend writing your own plain text contract so that you know exactly what it says and there's no weird legal term like in perpetuity that you're like, oh yeah, it sounded good, but now I don't own my art.
Isn't it a fact that like in the US, like you technically own your art until the person tells you, makes you sign a thing saying you don't own it?
Yes.
So really you can be the little and write your own contract because it is your property until you know.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the default is that you own it. Anyone else?
Yeah.
For your game animations, one was into how do you post them on Twitter? Because I spend hours getting like good impressions to not look like awful garbage.
Yeah.
And also, do you keep your like personal hot takes Twitter separate from your art personal hot things? Are you like personal like?
Oh yeah.
He thinks you're quippy.
Yeah, let me get my thing up because actually my animations were super choppy in the thing. Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So definitely everyone follow me, but
Oh, the art quips.
yeah. So yeah. At Paintbread. Anyway, yeah, definitely for posting stuff on Twitter, there's very specific dimensions, I believe, but don't quote me on it. You can look this up. I believe it changes every now and then, but it's somewhere, it's either 506 by whatever Y dimension, or it's 560. But there's like different sizes for in the Twitter feed, on the main page, on someone's feed, like when you go to the page, and then when you click on it and it gets bigger. So what I tend to do is I oversize my art since it is pixel art, and then I have it kind of to that largest size that's played in here, and it scales down pretty well. What did you find your problem was with your animations?
Well, I guess because my problem is that I have to use screen caps because I'm like screen capping Maya or Motion Builder.
Oh, definitely.
I'm not going to take the time to render frames, which is maybe my problem.
Yeah, I feel like for that you might have to, because when you're doing GIFs, it compresses them to MP4, and in the compression, like if there's more going on the screen, like if you have your UI and stuff too, it's a whole lot more information, and then it'll compress your actual graphics too. So maybe you should be rendering them out. I'd recommend that, yeah.
So hypnotizing.
Oh, thanks. Oh, oops. Oh, Hitler and Pikachu.
Clement!
Yeah, so, yeah, cool. That's that one.
Any other questions?
Oh, the time management.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier.
Totally.
You said that there was like an app for that?
Yeah, I forget the name of it. That's hard. You know, do what I say, not what I do. But so in the community in pixelation, there's a lot of people that use it. Just recently, I saw it going around the Slack. But you should be able to find it pretty easily if you do like procrastination tracker or something. It's some app, but it's very like specific, like where you're spending your time, and then you can like evaluate what you're doing. I know that when I started doing that, I was like, oh, why am I spending so much time on Reddit? That's not work. Yeah. So definitely, like, there's a bunch of different solutions for that. Actually, there's some clients have asked me to do like certain things like that to keep track of the time for my work itself. One thing that I didn't talk about, but that's super important and why is Hitler still on the screen, is that like streaming is super great for time management, because like you know exactly how long you work. You can set aside like a specific block of time. People will follow you. It's great. So I definitely recommend it. Like if you're an artist trying to get your audience expanded, to start streaming more and stuff like that.
You keep landing on these really damning tweets.
Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, okay, so about the hot takes, yeah, no, I do like, oh yeah, look, oh yeah, look. So that's Santa, as you can see, and it's kind of dark and the gamma's very high, but yeah.
Oh, you mean dark emotionally, right?
Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, so the hot takes, I definitely like don't post to Twitter very often when it comes to anything that isn't my art, but as you can see, I do still post stuff, and I mean, I don't really care. If you're posting like political opinions, don't do that. But like when it comes to like, that was like a Twitter meme, and it was like 2006 versus 2016, what did you look like? So like a lot of like other artists on my feed were doing that. And it actually like helps people get connected and stuff too. So I'd say that to a certain extent, the hot takes are okay.
Anyone else? Yes?
I was wondering about the fact that you kind of like, you stalk people who have a similar aesthetic to your work and then apply it to similar clients. Does it typically happen that the same clients would be searching out the same kind of work from different artists?
Almost exclusively. Like,
okay, that's interesting.
I can tell you a funny story about Bon. Is it okay if I talk about how you've been like the runner-up for this one artist over and over? So Corey has gotten emailed by several clients now being like, what's his name?
Boris Peltzer.
Being like, Boris Peltzer isn't available. Are you available? And like he kept getting like called in as like a dupe for him.
Yeah,
He's like the store brand version.
They like emailed my agency and they're like, hey, we were thinking of Boris Peltzer, or if he's not available, Corey Bradley.
Yeah. So like it's a real thing that they do as well. Like they'll look for people that are similar to whoever isn't available. And I'm like, hi, I've been known to sub for Callie.
Cool questions.
I have one.
Yeah.
Do you recommend resources for like developing the skills to like build a video game portfolio? Because like it's just like,
Why are you looking at me?
Yeah.
well, there are like so many things like
Yeah.
specific to video games that like aren't true of other like graphic art industries that like
So I would definitely just start following people on Twitter and then looking at their personal websites and looking what they put there. I think that that's like a pretty good indicator of what clients are looking for. I know that some of like the junior artists in the communities that I'm in, they'll like look at my portfolio and like try and copy it, and I'm like, oh, okay. And it works, you know, like just people are looking for a certain style, or like a consumable style, and that's kind of hard to take in sometimes because like if your work is extremely personal, it might not appeal to the most people, but I'd say that definitely like just shop around for like what other people are doing. Yeah. That's what you have to
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Actually, if you have like a 3D brand to post it on Instagram, that's what I do.
What you say?
Brand It's a Instagram app for your computer. So you just have to log in to your Instagram. And
Yeah.
that's what I do.
It's interesting. If you look at illustrators on Instagram, they'll have like, let's say they have like 20,000 followers. On Twitter, they'll have 5,000. You look at people who do game art, it's like the inverse of that. So it's kind of interesting that like that kind of discouragement from posting animations like has made a whole different art scene like form around each social media. I think there was one in the back. Wasn't
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah.
No question. Just can you both share your biggest mistakes over the course of your careers? Just as a learning experience.
Yeah.
I regret nothing.
You're so perfect.
No, I'm not perfect at all. I messed up a lot. I just don't. It didn't hurt my career at all. I sent out horrible portfolios, and people just, oh, that was my question, my prompt. If anyone's wondering, am I good enough to send out to art directors, just do it. Do it now.
Yeah.
Because there's no downside. Like, they're not going to blacklist you if you're really bad. The worst thing that could happen is that they're mean.
Yeah,
Honestly,
definitely.
that sucks. But like, do it right away because you're gonna get shitty jobs, and then you can leverage those into crappy jobs, and then you can leverage those into bad jobs.
Yeah.
And that's like genuinely how I built my career, was like sending out bad art, and like some like college newspaper was like, can you do something? And then I could be like, I am the client, or I am the artist for a college newspaper, and then I got a medium job.
Yeah, like definitely.
Even medium, that scientific term for.
Yeah, the crappy jobs that you might not want to take at the very beginning, or like maybe even if you think that your work isn't good enough, like if someone's willing to pay for it, definitely just put your art out there and do as many things as possible. Try not to undercharge, and like gradually build up to the point where like you get enough momentum that you can make a living.
Yeah.
You want to put yours up?
No.
No.
Oh, you want to put my website up? Yeah, you can do
Yeah.
that. I was like, I don't have a Twitter. Yeah.
See?
I know you talked about the AIGA website,
Yes.
but like how have you
How you spell your
actually
name?
figured
It's
out
J Wahlgren. WAHL. I'm sorry.
figured out your rates for different types of jobs and whether you're selling the
Thanks,
right
Clement.
to your work or
Yeah. Yeah, that can be really hard.
hourly or by second or minute of animation. Like I'm something that I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah. So that can be really hard to figure out, and it's so subjective. I did a poster like a year ago for $30, and then I did a poster last week for like $2,000, and I put the same amount of work into both of them, but I just wasn't comfortable charging that much at first. So like, I would say break it down to an hourly rate and make sure, even if they're charging you for a piece, so Clement gets paid by the hour, I get paid by the piece. If they're paying you by the piece, make sure you think about how long it'll take you to make that piece. So one editorial client will pay me $500 for something, and I'll spend a long time on it. One will pay me $75 for something, and I make sure I only spend 3 hours on it. And I don't let myself work on it after 3 hours because I don't want to make less than $25 an hour. So I'd say pick a rate that you feel like you can live off of. If you want like hard numbers, what kind of work do you do? Like it's hard to judge.
I mean, I do a few different things right now, but I do animation work.
Okay.
And a little bit of illustration, but let's just say like mostly like 2D and drawn animation.
He probably knows more about how to charge for animation.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's kind of the same process as you use for illustrations, like just judging from your experience, like how long something is going to take. But there is also for animation, you can charge per frame. Usually it's like a lot less per frame than you charge per hour, obviously. You like kind of see like how many frames is an animation, how long does it usually take you to do something of similar length, and that's kind of just how you have to gauge everything. What I do is I give a quote to the client, and sometimes it'll be a hard quote where that's all they're going to pay me, and they'll pay me up front for like half, and they'll pay me up at completion for the other half. Other times, like it's in a scenario where I'll give a quote for the expected amount, but then like they pay me for the hours at the end. You just need to work that out with your client on a case-by-case basis.
Another thing I would suggest is let them tell you how much they want first, because often their budget will be more than you would have asked for. And if they ask you, there's a polite deferment that I like you like copy and paste over and over. And if they say like, well, what's your budget? You can say, I've worked with all kinds of budgets. What are you working with? And it's just like, you can't really like keep going back and forth. So eventually they'll be like, okay, it's 500. And you can be like, anyone else? Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks so much for letting us talk to you.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
All right, so after this, just feel free to network, walk around.
Network?
Sure.